He bailed him out 3 times, then told me I owed him one. I still remember the way my father's voice sounded that night, low, steady, and soaked in something that wasn't quite anger, but something worse, certainty. He had just wired another $5,000 to the county jail. Blake, my younger brother, had been arrested. Again. 3rd time in 2 years. This time for punching a bouncer at a club in Subby, after trying to skip out on a bill and mouthing off about knowing people. And again, Dad bailed him out without blinking. "He's your brother," Dad said, placing the phone on the kitchen counter. "You owe us this." I blinked. "What?" He leaned back in his chair like we were having a conversation about the weather. "We've done our part. Now it's your turn." It didn't make sense. None of it did. I hadn't asked them to bail Blake out the first time, let alone the second. And now the third? They never consulted me. But now somehow I owed them. I'm Ethan. I'm 32, a financial consultant in Boston. I pay my rent on time. I have an IRA. My idea of a wild night is finishing a bottle of red while watching market trends. And for the record, I've never been arrested. But in my family, Blake, the golden boy who once stole Mom's credit card to buy concert tickets, was just figuring things out. I was the uptight one, the emotionally unavailable son who didn't understand how family works. I was the reliable one, the one who didn't cause scenes. And that, apparently, made me responsible for the rest. It's not like I didn't help. I covered part of Mom's hospital bills last year when insurance came up short. I helped Dad restructure his retirement portfolio after the market dipped. I even co-opened an account under Dad's name to manage his real estate investments tax efficiently. But none of that counted. Because I said no. Because this time I refused. I'm not paying Blake's bail. I told them, straight-faced. Not again. Not ever. Dad's expression shifted from calm to cold. His jaw tightened, and that vein in his temple, the one that always surfaced before he yelled at Blake, pulsed. "You ungrateful little bastard," he hissed. "After everything we've done for you." "For me?" I said, stunned. "I've paid rent since I was 18. I paid my way through school. You took out a second mortgage for Blake's college. He didn't even finish a semester. He was going through things." My mother shouted from across the room, her hands shaking around a dish towel. "You never gave him grace." That's when I realized we weren't having a conversation. We were replaying a script. One I'd never written but had always been cast in. "You owe us this," Dad repeated. "He's your brother. Family means sacrifice." "No," I said, voice low but steady. "This isn't sacrifice. This is enabling. And I'm done being part of it." I stood, ready to leave. I wasn't expecting thanks. I just wanted distance. That's when it happened. Dad moved faster than I thought a 61-year-old man could. One moment I was walking toward the front door. The next, I felt a rough shove against my shoulder. I stumbled back, hitting the hallway wall. Hard. "Don't you walk away from me," he barked, his face red, lips trembling. "I put a roof over your head. For 18 years. I snapped. Then I paid for everything else. "You just don't like that I won't pay for Blake's mess," Mom screamed. Blake, freshly out of jail, still smelling like a holding cell, just stood at the top of the stairs, saying nothing, like this wasn't about him at all. I walked out that night. No dramatic slamming of the door. No swearing. Just silence. But inside, something cracked open. I always thought loyalty was about endurance. That if I stayed long enough, paid enough, tolerated enough, it would mean something. But that night, as I drove through the quiet, snow-lined streets of Boston, I realized something. In my family, loyalty was a transaction. And I had just refused the terms. That was the beginning. Not of the fight, but of the unraveling. Because the next time they called, it wasn't just about bail. It was about breaking. And they had no idea I'd already started putting the pieces of my freedom together. It had been 3 weeks since I walked out of that house. No calls. No messages. I thought maybe, just maybe, that meant something had finally shifted. That the silence was a sign of space. A space they never allowed me before. But I was wrong. The email came on a Tuesday morning. Subject line, "Need to talk." It was from my mother. She never emailed. She used texting like she was typing with boxing gloves. Abbreviations, random capital letters, every sentence ending in an ellipsis. But this was different. This was deliberate. I didn't open it right away. I finished my client calls, took my usual walk to the cafe down the block, ordered a medium black coffee, and only when I sat back at my desk did I open it. It was short. "Ethan, we need your help. Blake's in trouble again. Dad says we need you to come by tonight. Please, Mom." No details. No apologies. Just, again. That night, I drove back out to the house, against every instinct I had left. The same suburban home with the beige shutters and the crack in the driveway no one ever fixed. I parked 2 houses down, like I used to in high school when I didn't want anyone knowing I lived there. Inside, nothing had changed. The living room still smelled like lemon pledge and tension. Blake was slouched on the couch, his eyes rimmed red, flipping through TikToks with the volume low. My father sat in his recliner like a man waiting to be obeyed. My mother wrung her hands in her lap. I stood there, not sitting. "So what now?" I asked. Dad cleared his throat. "There's a situation." "Of course there is. This time serious." He continued, ignoring the sarcasm. "Blake was with some friends. Things got out of hand. Vandalism. Property damage. He resisted arrest." I looked at Blake, who still hadn't looked up. "He punched a cop," I said flat. My mother flinched. "Allegedly," she whispered. "And the bail?" I asked. Dad handed me a piece of paper. It was a court notice. The bail amount had doubled since the last time, now sitting at $20,000. "You've got the liquidity," Dad said plainly. "If you act as guarantor, the money doesn't even leave your account unless he flees." "You mean again?" I said. "Unless he gets arrested again." My father's eyes narrowed. "This isn't about money," he snapped. "This is about loyalty." There it was again. That word. Loyalty. A word that had come to me. How much are you willing to bleed for someone who won't lift a finger for you? "No," I said simply. "Ethan," my mother began, voice trembling. "No," I repeated. "I'm not putting my name on anything for him. Not anymore. This isn't help. It's a bribe for silence. You want me to shut up and keep covering his mess, because if I stop, you have to look at it. You think you're better than us?" Dad barked, rising from his chair. "You think money makes you superior? I think responsibility makes me different," I said, standing my ground. "And I'm tired of being punished for it." My father's face turned red again. Not the full storm like before, but the kind that simmers. "You were always cold," he said. "Even as a kid. Never cried, never needed. You just sat there, like a little robot." I almost laughed. I wanted to tell him that being emotionless was my survival mechanism in this house. That being self-sufficient wasn't a gift, it was a shield. But instead I just said, "I learned it from you." The room went still. Blake finally looked up, then looked away like none of it concerned him. And maybe it didn't. Maybe he knew they'd find another way to bail him out. They always did. Dad tried one last card. "Your mother's been sick," he said. "You want her worrying herself into another episode? Is that what you want? Guilt? Always the final weapon." I turned to Mom. "Are you really okay with this?" Tears welled in her eyes, but she didn't answer. She just looked at Blake, and then at Dad, and finally back at her lap. That was all I needed to see. I left. But that time, something hardened in me. I wasn't just walking away. I was shutting a door I no longer planned to open. The next few days were a blur. At first, I didn't take any calls. Then I blocked their numbers altogether. I transferred all remaining funds out of the joint management account I had with Dad. It was legally his, but I had signing rights on the investments. I had set it up years ago when I thought we were building something together, buying up small real estate parcels to flip or lease out. Now I saw it for what it was, leverage. Not for the family's future, but mine. They thought I would break. They thought I'd cave. Instead, I called my lawyer. I laid out every document, every agreement, every clause I had kept receipts on for the last 5 years. We found loopholes. We found backdoors. We found leverage I didn't even realize I had until now. And I began planning. But before I made my move, they made theirs. A week later, I received a certified letter at my apartment. It was from Dad. 3 pages typed. It accused me of betrayal. It said I was abandoning my blood. That I was choosing money over morality. That if I didn't reconsider, they'd have no choice but to dissolve the partnership and seek damages. I laughed. Actually laughed. Because the account they were talking about, I had already frozen it. And the assets? I had already restructured them, legally. They hadn't noticed yet, but they would. And when they did, they'd realize something Blake never did. You can't punch your way out of a contract. He signed everything over. He didn't read the fine print. The thing about revenge, real revenge, is that it doesn't come with shouting matches or slammed doors. It doesn't arrive with fists or fury. It shows up in silence. Signed. Notarized. Filed. By the time they see it coming, it's already done. After I received my father's letter, the one accusing me of betrayal, the one threatening legal action, I didn't flinch. I smiled. Because in that moment, I realized he didn't understand what he was threatening. He was still playing a game of emotional warfare, thinking I'd come crawling back to avoid guilt, to preserve some illusion of family. But what he didn't know was that while he was trying to guilt me into submission, I had already laid the foundation of my escape. Years ago, before everything started to rot, I helped Dad build a real estate portfolio. Nothing massive, just a handful of mid-tier properties in and around Massachusetts. Duplexes, small commercial spaces, a few long-term rental units. He had the capital but not the knowledge. I had the strategy. I helped him restructure ownership under investment vehicles and LLCs. I created a financial network where I had co-signing rights, management control, and access, mostly to ease his growing paranoia about taxes and liability. He always said, "One day this will be yours, Ethan. You're the only one who'll know how to keep it alive." Well, that day came. Just not the way he expected. After his threat letter, I didn't respond. Instead, I made one final call to my attorney, Rob Whitman, a guy I met during a nasty contract negotiation in my firm's early years. He was discreet, brilliant, and carried the casual rage of someone who had also been the family's disappointment. He understood. I laid out the structure, 7 properties, 5 of which were jointly managed under our umbrella LLC. I had 51% management authority on 3 of them. For the others, I had equal signing power, but only if a liquidity clause was triggered. That clause, written by me, stated, in the event of ongoing delinquency, reputational risk, or operational instability, the managing partner reserves the right to freeze and redirect funds in pursuit of fiduciary protection. Delinquency. Blake's criminal record had made securing renters difficult for at least 2 properties. Reputational risk. Easy. I had receipts, newspaper clippings, even a viral tweet that surfaced during Blake's last arrest. Operational instability. My father's temper had chased away 2 long-time tenants from one commercial lease. I documented it all. Rob filed the motions. We quietly triggered the clause. And then I moved in silence. The first change came in the form of a notification. Ownership entity restructured, approved. I had officially converted one of the LLCs into a wholly owned subsidiary under a holding company I controlled outright. Clean, legal, irreversible. The second change came a week later. I signed off on the sale of 2 units that had been underperforming for years. I accepted a slight loss, but liquidated them fast, redirecting the cash into a trust structure under my name. When Dad found out, he thought it was a glitch. He called. Left voicemails. Angry ones? "Ethan, what the hell is going on? I can't access the account. The property manager says you terminated their contract. Call me back." I didn't. A few days later, he emailed again. This one was less rage, more confusion. "Ethan, the bank says the investment account is frozen. I had a transfer scheduled to pay the HVAC team for the Dorchester unit. They're threatening to walk. What are you doing?" Still, I said nothing. Because the truth was simple. He signed everything over years ago. He just never read the fine print. When I offered to set up those LLCs, I had one condition: my name on all the paperwork. He agreed, assuming it was for simplicity, that I was being efficient. He even bragged to his friends at the golf course. "My boy's a whiz. Got us bulletproof. The IRS can't touch us." Now, all those signatures were coming back. Not to haunt him. To free me. There was only one final property left. The crown jewel. A 3-story rental in Cambridge that had been passed around the family like an heirloom. Dad considered it untouchable. It was jointly owned, technically. But I had controlling interest through a quiet buy-in I'd executed 2 years prior. He needed the cash at the time. Blake had wrecked a car and owed restitution, and I'd wired the money without comment. In return, he signed a revised operating agreement. Now it was mine. I didn't sell it. I didn't need to. I refinanced it under my own holding company. Moved the debt. Reset the lien. The final blow came not with a bang, but a notification email. All title transfers completed. Ethan Marsh Holdings now holds 100% controlling interest in the following properties. I printed it out and placed it in an envelope. No return address. Just a sticky note on top that said, "Business is business." I dropped it in their mailbox one rainy Thursday afternoon. Didn't ring the bell. Didn't wait for a reaction. That night, my phone rang. Blocked number. I answered. "What the hell did you do?" Dad's voice. Strained. Quiet. I protected myself. I said, "From you? From Blake? From this? You stole from your own family." "No." I said. You gave it away. You just didn't pay attention. There was a long silence. Then, we trusted you. No, I corrected. You used me. Over and over. I stopped letting you. Click. He hung up. The aftermath wasn't explosive. It was slow. A leaking boat they couldn't plug. They tried to access old bank accounts. Denied. They tried to reach out to my lawyer. He sent a formal cease and desist. Blake texted once. Bro, WTF you do? Dad's freaking. I didn't answer. I wasn't cruel about it. I didn't evict them from anything. I didn't humiliate them publicly. I didn't share screenshots or write threads on Reddit. I just stopped letting them profit off me. That winter, I sent a single legal notice outlining the changes and offering them a single payout, a courtesy severance, essentially, for the minor equity they had left in one small property I hadn't yet restructured. They declined. 2 months later, I sold that too. Everything was clean. Every document signed. Every move legal. Every asset accounted for. By spring, I was completely free. I moved out of Boston. Found a quiet house near the coast in Maine. I set up my home office overlooking the water. Bought a second-hand boat I barely knew how to operate. Started sleeping through the night again. No late-night calls. No guilt trips. No bail requests. They say silence is a sign of peace. Sometimes it's just the sound of bridges burning behind you. The hardest part wasn't the decision to walk away. It was what came after. Those quiet moments when you begin to realize just how much of your life was wrapped around people who never saw you clearly. Not for what you were, only for what you could give. After the final papers were signed, after the last property was legally mine, and every legal thread untangled, I expected some sense of euphoria. Relief, maybe. Closure, at the very least. But what I got was silence. The phone didn't ring. No angry voicemails. No desperate texts. It was like they had finally figured out that the version of me they knew, compliant, silent, always ready to clean up the mess, was gone for good. Or maybe they simply didn't know what to say anymore, now that there was nothing left to take. I rented a moving truck. Didn't even hire a crew. Just packed my things myself, one box at a time. The furniture didn't matter. Most of it I sold, gave away, or left behind. What I kept fit into half a truck in the back seat of my car: books, a few framed photos from college, the set of golf clubs I barely used but couldn't bring myself to part with, and my mother's old tea kettle, the only thing I ever felt she gave me without a price tag attached. The new place was modest. A weathered 2-story house near the rocky coastline in Maine. The kind of town where people waved from porches they actually sat on, and where the loudest noise at night was the wind through the pines. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. No forwarding address. No social media update. Just gone. For the first time in my adult life, I wasn't waiting for the next crisis to arrive in the form of a phone call. No more text messages at 2 a.m. with the words, "Blake needs help." No more bank transfers marked as temporary. No more family dinners where my silence was read as hostility, and my restraint mistaken for arrogance. There were no more performances to put on. No more emotional currency to be mined. I was no longer the family accountant, crisis manager, or silent backbone. I was just a man with a front porch, an old kettle, and a quiet view of the sea. I worked remotely, consulting for clients I actually liked. I started cooking again. I went to the local library and got a card. I talked to my neighbors, not about work, not about family. Just small things. Tomatoes, weather, good fishing spots. And I started sleeping. Really sleeping. No dreams. Number 3 a.m. startles. Just darkness and peace. But peace isn't always quiet. Sometimes it's uncomfortable. Some mornings, I wake up with my hand reaching for my phone, expecting a missed call. A crisis. A guilt trip. Other days, I check my email out of habit, half expecting another letter from my father, another fire to put out, another guilt-soaked monologue masquerading as just trying to talk. But it never came. Instead, what came was the quiet realization that they were gone. Or rather, that I was. 1 year passed. Seasons turned. Snow fell, melted, returned. I had rebuilt a life without anyone noticing. No family holidays. No awkward birthdays. Not a single attempt at reconciliation. Until Christmas. It was snowing hard that morning, one of those heavy, silent storms that makes the whole world look like it's been put on mute. I was sitting by the fire, drinking coffee, when I heard the faint sound of tires crunching over fresh snow. A car. I stayed seated. Watched through the window. It was them. My parents' car. Same beige sedan they'd had for years. It looked older now. Like it didn't belong in this quiet, distant place. like it had driven through too many storms to get here. They didn't get out right away. They just sat there. I watched the wipers tick back and forth, pushing away the snow. Then my father opened his door. Stiffly. He stood up, took a deep breath, and walked toward the house, holding something in his hand. A letter. Of course. My mother stayed in the car. He didn't knock. He didn't ring the bell. He slid the envelope through the mail slot. And he stood there, for almost a full minute. I didn't move. Eventually, he turned and walked back to the car. He didn't look back. They drove away. I didn't open the envelope that day. Not even the next. It sat on the counter for a week unopened. I glanced at it every now and then, wondering what it said. But deep down I knew. It wouldn't be an apology. That wasn't in their nature. It would be something vague. A justification wrapped in nostalgia. A plea for connection that ignored every boundary I had ever tried to set. So I never opened it. Instead, I walked down to the post office a few days later, bought a box of Christmas cards, and sat at my desk writing exactly one. I used the one picture I had from this new life, a photo I'd taken of my porch during the first snowfall of the year. I printed it on the front. Inside I wrote, "Hope you find peace." I already have. I signed it, sealed it, and mailed it to their house. No return address. No second message. Just that. I didn't throw them out. I didn't yell. I didn't burn bridges with fire. I just stopped opening the door. And somehow, that was louder than anything I'd ever said. Peace isn't the absence of noise. It's the absence of expectation. When I think about them now, I don't feel rage. Not even sadness. Just distance. Me on this side of the water, them on the other. And that space? It's enough. They can live their lives. Keep spinning their narratives. Keep looking for someone else to carry Blake, to forgive without question, to pay the next bail. It won't be me. My job is done. Not because I gave up, but because I finally realized that love without boundaries is not loyalty. It's surrender. And I don't do that anymore. For the longest time, I believed that family was an unbreakable contract, one not written on paper, but etched in obligation. That no matter how deeply you were hurt, how often you were manipulated, or how loudly your boundaries were dismissed, you had to stay. You had to forgive. You had to show up. Because that's what family does. Or so I was told. Growing up, I thought love meant sacrifice. That to prove your loyalty, you had to endure. So I did. I covered for others. I paid what wasn't mine. I stayed silent to keep the peace. And with each unspoken word, with every check I wrote, a piece of me faded. Slowly. Quietly. Until I couldn't recognize the version of myself who kept showing up to be used. This story isn't about anger. It's not even about revenge. It's about clarity. The kind that comes only when you finally step back far enough to see the full picture. Not just the love you gave, but the one you never received in return. Not just the sacrifices you made, but the ones you were never asked to make. The expectations placed on you were never shared with others. The double standards. The guilt. The silence. I learned that not all love is healthy. Not all loyalty is noble. Some of it is learned survival. A script passed down from generation to generation, convincing you that tolerating mistreatment is a form of strength. That protecting others at the cost of yourself is virtue. That endurance equals love. It doesn't. Sometimes, the most loving thing you can do is leave. Not out of hatred, but out of self-respect. Not to punish, but to preserve. I learned that boundaries are not barriers. They are doors. They're not meant to keep people out, but to protect the parts of yourself you fought too hard to build. And when people pound on those doors, demanding entry without accountability, the refusal to open them isn't cruel. It's necessary. I learned that silence can be power. That not engaging in every argument, not responding to every accusation, doesn't make you weak. It makes you intentional. There's a difference between avoiding conflict and choosing peace. One is fear. The other is wisdom. Most of all, I learned that walking away is not the same as giving up. Giving up is when you stop caring. Walking away is when you care too much to stay in a place that keeps wounding you. The day I stopped opening the door wasn't the day I became heartless. It was the day I chose to stop bleeding in rooms where no one brought bandages, only blame. It was the day I stopped explaining myself to people committed to misunderstanding me. The day I realized I could grieve the family I never had, while still being grateful for the clarity they gave me. Because without their betrayal, I might have never discovered the depth of my own strength. Without their silence, I might have never heard the voice inside me saying, "You deserve better." And without being pushed to the edge, I might have never taken the leap toward peace. There's a misconception in our world that walking away is weakness. That letting go means defeat. But the truth is, not everyone gets to have access to you forever, especially when their access comes with conditions, control, or chronic harm. Sometimes, closing a door is the kindest thing you can do for yourself. And ironically, even for them. Because when you stop being the emotional safety net, people are forced to confront the weight of their own behavior. They may not change. They may never apologize. But that no longer becomes your burden to carry. Your only job is to protect your peace and live in a way that reflects what you finally know to be true. That you are not responsible for the healing of those who keep hurting you. That you are allowed to choose peace, even if it means distance. That love does not mean unconditional access. It means mutual respect. And that your life, your time, your energy, it's worth protecting. Now, as I sit in the quiet of a life I'd built on my own terms, I no longer seek validation from the people who couldn't see me. I no longer chase the love I thought I had to earn. I no longer confuse obligation with affection. I am free. Not because I burned bridges, but because I finally realized some bridges were never meant to be crossed in the first place. So if you're reading this, holding guilt for stepping away from a toxic family dynamic, questioning whether you're heartless for choosing yourself, hear this. You are not wrong for leaving. You are not cold for protecting your peace. You are not selfish for choosing boundaries over chaos. You are wise. You are brave. You are finally free. And that's not abandonment. That's healing.